I'm going through this series on the secret powers of meditation. All right. So, before I'll come back to this moment. So, there are 10 of these that I've thought of more. Now I've got about another 3 or 4 that I want to add, and I'm not sure what to do with them, but I'll tell you about that another time. Last week was on the power of presence, or the power of being in the present and concentration and focusing, power of focus. And we did have a little exercise from that, if you remember, and this was the external part of that. So most of what we talked about last week was about focusing inward in meditation, or focusing your attention on whatever you're doing, and trying different ways to induce that. But we also had a question from the previous week about, how do I focus in my work or on the things I need to do or want to do, and what does that look like? So I remember I gave you a piece of homework, or at least we had this exercise, which was a really good technique I learned from Tim Ferriss, who's a kind of you can say a high achievement coach. Or no more than a coach. He experiments with ways to improve his mind and his performance. And he interviews a lot of people. And he said when he's got too many things he wants to do, he'll list them. And it might be 10 or it might be 20, or like I was telling you last week about how I had 27 books that I want to write, which is probably not going to happen in my lifetime. But how do you choose the ones that are most important? And he had this really good technique. He said, okay, of these different things, is there one of these things that will make at least some of the others unnecessary? And I want to know if any of you came up with anything like that. Any really pivotal, you could say, pivotal things that you want to do that will leverage, that have more leverage, that will actually make other things that you thought you wanted to do, make them, unnecessary. Any thoughts? Any insights you might like to share? I remember, there was one that I was, I'm talking with a friend about actually this week. I think I might have mentioned, he was asking my advice on writing. He wants to write 2 books. He wants to write one business book and another on his memoir, because he's had a very dramatic recovery from leukemia. He was supposed to die, and he's been through 7 years of treatment, and now he's recovered, and it's like a miracle. A lot of amazing experiences he had. And he asked me about writing a book, and I've written books, and I know it's a lot of work. And I told him, why did you hire someone to do it? Because it's not something that I think, it can take 3 or 4 years at least to become a good writer. And he's looking at working with a ghostwriter or somebody who's going to do most of the writing. So that's, for him, it's more efficient or effective to actually, a way to get to that goal, rather than saying, okay, I'm going to write the whole book myself, which might take him 4 or 5 years. I'm going to build my business. He's a very talented businessman. So do a little bit more work in your business, and you'll be able to afford to hire a writer who can do it better than you. He may or may not take my advice. He's not sure, but I thought that would be more practical, rather than having to learn an entire new skill. It's different if you see your writing as your main career, but it's not his main career. He just wants to get a book done about his experience. So that was one practical piece of advice I gave him. So we're going to talk about the power of sound this week. So I have a question for you, and I want you to unmute your mics to answer this one, because it's probably the easiest way to do it. Simply this: what is sound? Something we experience as long as we're able. It's not everybody can hear, but as long as you're ears, and you have this sense is functioning. We experience it. What is it? What is it actually that we are experiencing? Can you describe it?
I guess vibration, like sound waves.
That's one kind of sound. But okay, let's get some other thoughts on that, because I have a question, a follow-on question for that.
I want to say it's like sound is like a frequency of vibration.
It is what sort of vibration?
Like a frequency.
Frequency, okay. So what is vibrating? What is actually happening when you hear a sound?
You feel the vibration.
Okay.
Sound could be a link between human beings and animals that hear on our wavelengths.
Human beings and what?
Animals that can hear on our same wavelengths. So it's a way that we link to one another.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a way of connecting.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way of seeing it. A nice, different perspective. Cool.
Also, it seems like if you have reflective consciousness, that sound, like I can, in my mind, imagine you're singing Babanam Kevalam in the same, an exact replica of what you just sang. So we can imagine sound in that sense.
So this is getting interesting. So in that instance, there is no physical vibration. It's
Right.
just thought, right? It's mental activity.
I think so. Yeah.
So if you dream, so that's a great example. You think about it, but you think about this. What if you dream about music? Is that sound?
Mm.
There's no physical vibration. There's nothing. There's no compression of the air by, in response to waves hitting your eardrum.
It's the memory of sound, or the projection, the creation of sound in your own mind.
I think so.
I don't know.
I'm not going to give you an answer. I just want you to think about sound in a broader way, from a broader perspective. There are different things that we experience that we call sound, but it's not as obvious as you might imagine. Like Sudama, I think it was Sudama said that it's a way of connecting with the outside world from the mind. So the mind connects to the world through this sense.
Can sound be a perceptive, like how people perceive sound? No.
I mean, it comes down to what our senses are, right? The senses are like a gateway between the mind and the external world. So sound is one of them, or the sense of sound. But sound itself, it's vibration, but we can also experience it as only a mental experience.
Okay.
So you could,
Wikipedia, Google.
This is known as cheating.
It's interesting though what they say. They say in physics, sound is a vibration that propagates as an acoustic wave, like we've been talking about, through transmission mediums such as gas, liquid, or solid. In human physiology and psychology, sound is the reception of such waves and their perception in the brain. Perception.
Yeah. So that's pretty neat. And then, so the third part of that would be, and there's a bit of a question mark whether people would call this sound. I mean, I don't know if Wikipedia would agree that you or I experiencing sound in a dream is sound. When we think of a sound, is that sound or not? So I'm just raising that question. I'm going to go on. I just want to start by confusing you. All right.
Good job.
Great. Now I've got some more questions for you. I just want to disturb you all here. What was the very first sound you heard in your life?
I think the sound of, is it called amniotic fluid in the womb? You know, like almost like
Heartbeat.
being underwater.
Yeah, my mother's heart.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Your mother's heart.
right.
I think so. That would be that's my. Of course, I don't remember it. I don't suppose any of you do. Do you?
No.
But actually, I saw a video. I couldn't find it. I wanted to show it to you. It was kind of just sort of disturbing, but kind of beautiful. I saw a video recently of a baby, very small, pretty young baby. And what had happened was the baby's mother had, I think it was a boy, baby's mother had died in childbirth. And her heart was donated to somebody else, another woman. And this woman had adjusted and was able to survive thanks to her heart, right? And they actually when the baby was a few months old, the woman had recovered from the surgery. She had, was living with the mother's heart, and they had the baby. She was holding the baby, and the baby heard her heartbeat and reacted very strongly, like as if the baby was recognizing this heartbeat, not just any heartbeat. And it was kind of intense, kind of just watching it was like, oh my God, this is it's sort of beautiful, but kind of strange at the same time. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So first sound we heard was our mother's heartbeat. All right, here's another question. What's your favorite sound? I'm not including music, okay, but some sort of sounds, different kinds of sounds we hear.
My favorite sound is the sound of quiet waves, quiet ocean water rolling up on coral sand. And so you hear the sand, the coral kind of rolling in the water. And there's a very special sound that goes with that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Let's have some other. You can type them in the chat if you like. I'd really like to hear this one from everybody because it's different for everybody. So you can either say it or type it in the chat if you want.
Yeah, I think mine would be similar, like the movement of water, like rainfall or a creek or just moving water. I think is relaxing for me.
Dada, my favorite sound is like the chirping of birds.
Nice one.
Yes.
Bird song. Yeah. I think that might be mine. I'm not sure. I can't decide, but that's one of my favorites. Rain and the wind. I love that. Oh, here we got more wind and water, rain and wind. Okay, we're getting some common themes here, right? Anyone else? I think we're just about everybody has hit. Maybe.
I would say, yeah, the sound of raindrops falling.
Raindrops keep falling on my head. The song, right? Right. So water is a very common one, that sort of soothing feeling. And bird song. Interesting thing about bird song, there's been some research into what's happening physiologically when we hear bird song. And the conclusion seems to be that bird song people find very relaxing. Autumn leaves falling from the trees, that's lovely. Yeah, we're made of 96% water. Is that right? I keep hearing different percentages. But anyway, we're mostly water. Yeah, we relate to water very strongly. But bird song is interesting because we'll go into it a bit later. But just think about that. A lot of people like bird song, but think about why. Or let's turn it around to give you a clue. What happens if say you're listening to birds and then the birds stop singing? What does that mean? Oh, Wikipedia just told us that we're 60% water. I don't even know if that's correct. I've heard like half a dozen different numbers.
I thought it was like 70%.
I thought so too, but I don't know. Let me just check. Let me see.
Maybe our facts are outdated.
I'm counting the water molecules here. It's going to take a while. Hang on. We'll come back to the bird song, but it's a bit of a mystery. Okay, another sound. What's a sound? Okay, hey, here's the third question for you. How is sound different from sight? But there's a particularly significant way in which it's different from sight in the way that it functions. Oh, God, so dumb. Forget about your water. I want to know how sound is different from sight. So what do we got? Oh yeah, we're coming to sounds we don't like in a moment, Krishnatma.
It's not visible.
Well, yeah, that's
It's still away.
that is a little obvious. But there's something else about it in the way that we can. How can I say the way we can use it or not use it?
It seems like in some ways it's harder to shift, the percentage of awareness away from sound, where you can kind of do that with vision.
Well, yeah, precisely. We don't have earlids, okay? We have eyelids, so we can switch off sight. Not
And also
completely,
we can stare right at something and our mind cannot be seeing it. But it's hard to do that with hearing, I think.
No, people can also do that with hearing, but it's more difficult.
Yeah.
But that's true. But the main thing is about control. We can, firstly, well, there's two things with sight. We can switch it on or off, or we can choose where to look. But with sound,
Right.
we don't have nearly as much control. We basically, whatever sound's going on, we get to listen to it. You can put your fingers in your ears and cut off most of it, but that's inconvenient. But sound is kind of it's there all the time kind of thing. Even when you're asleep, right? You're sleeping, you can be disturbed by sound that's going on that you might still be asleep, but it still affects you when you're sleeping. So there's a very big sort of, in other words, it's like always there. It's like a continuous presence in our environment. Whereas with sight, we typically turn that off when we go to sleep or at other times when we're meditating, for example. So that's why we like to meditate in a quiet place, but it doesn't have to be dark, right? Just in relation to meditation. Here we go. Now, sounds can affect us subliminally. That's very true. But sight also affects us subliminally, but in a different way. You're right. I would say that, they both actually affect us subliminally. But the key thing is the control. Okay, I think that's all my questions. Oh no, here's oh yeah. So we asked you your favorite sound. What's your least or one of your least favorite sounds? So Krishnatma already mentioned fingers. What was it? Fingers on the blackboard? Yeah, that really bothers some people, including me. Tell us a few sounds you don't like.
The sound of bones breaking.
Bones breaking. Oh God, especially if they're mine. I don't think I've heard that, thankfully. Perhaps something a little more everyday. People smacking or popping a gum. Oh, that's interesting. That's something you find really annoying. Mm-hmm. I really can't stand. I don't like balloons. I really don't like balloons squeaking, and that bothers me even more than fingernails on the blackboard. Squeaking balloons, that really makes me crazy. I can't stand it. So we've got bones breaking, balloons being squeaked, and gum popping. What else?
I think really shrill screaming.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
What about traffic?
Sound of motors.
Motors,
like,
right?
Like even like motors in the air conditioner or motors in the refrigerator, like just like those like noises that they're like always ongoing.
That's a very interesting one. And actually, the research on. Sorry, you had another one?
It's like a background noise pollution. It's just like it gets to you.
And that's babies crying on a long plane flight. Yeah, that's painful. Certain radio talk show hosts. Sound of constructing, building, and machines. So it's again machines. So what seems to be going on I've read some research about this and the effect of different sounds on us physiologically. So natural sounds, if it's a continuous sound, if it's something like rain falling or waves breaking or a stream flowing, this we find very soothing. But machine sound is very debilitating on our nervous system. And if it's continuous, it actually can cause diseases because it's a constant low level of stress. And constant low level stress is extremely unhealthy. It can really cause serious illnesses over time. And there's been quite a lot of research into this around, people living in cities where there's continuous background traffic noise, or living near airports. They even found that people living near airports, children living near airports, they performed significantly less well in school. And then when they moved away from the airport, or actually in this case, the airport moved, and all the children's performance in school improved. So that sort of engine noise is extremely harmful physiologically on our physical health and also on our mental health and focus. So
I used to work near a stockyard where animals were just screaming continuously, being murdered. And that was so stressful, just to hear the suffering, or what you imagine in your mind as being really terrifying suffering before your death,
So that's another phenomena. So that's the sound itself, probably very aggravating, but it's the association with the sound that's affecting you there. So there's kind of two factors, and I want to look at that a little bit here. So this is how sound vibrations affect us, and of course they first started affecting us in the womb, because the first of our senses. So we have 5 senses, right? So we've got touch, sound, touch, hearing, vision, smell, and taste. Apparently, the first sensory organ to develop is the ear, and so we start hearing in the womb very early on. I believe it's around about the 5th month, if I remember rightly. So there's 2 ways that it affects us. One is through the vibration itself, the resonance, and that affects our nervous system and our physical body and the chakras, which we're going to look at much later. But there's also the association. So you mentioned that association of the sound of the animals dying. That's very heavy. But the story about the baby, right? The baby heard its mother's heart. The baby became kind of upset. So there's this association with the memory of the mother and being in the womb and being in that safe place. And the baby, was emotionally disturbed to hear that again. So heartbeats like that. Now I'm going to come back to my question about the bird song. What do you think's happening? What's the association with bird song? What's our instinctive association with bird song?
Springtime.
Yes, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so it's the end of winter, which in some parts of the world is very harsh. But there's another one which is perhaps, I would suggest, more immediate.
It seems joyous, like an uplifting sound to hear birds.
Yeah, probably. I don't. But what do we associate it with? What is it? What?
Sunshine.
Okay, possibly. But there's another big instinctive one.
Well, communication, I guess, on some level.
You're not getting it.
Is it love?
No. It's survival. It's safety.
Oh.
When the birds are singing, it means there aren't predators.
That's true.
Which is a major survival instinct. So we unconsciously associate birdsong with absence of danger or safety. And when the birds stop singing, then we pay attention because there's a reason they've stopped singing. And it may be a threat to them, but it may also be a threat to us. All right. So the associative part of the things we associate with sounds also can affect us very deeply. And some of that is a deep-rooted instinctive thing. So isn't that interesting? So a few more things about sound. So sound itself, sort of external. Here I'm talking about physical sound, but not necessarily. So what happens? What do armies? What's the instruction to soldiers if they walk across a bridge? A troop of soldiers.
Don't walk in step.
Did anyone else know that already? And are you going to, anyway, apart from Siddharma, because we've talked about this before. Yeah, break cadence. Okay, why? Why?
Harmonics.
Pardon?
The harmonics. It'll if people are marching in step, they'll develop a harmonic, and the bridge could get into a wave pattern that collapses a bridge.
Yeah, it sounds kind of it's strange, but that's right. If you a troop of soldiers walking in step across a bridge can start the bridge swinging, and if they're in the same rhythm as the harmonic of the bridge, depends on the length of the bridge, basically, that can keep swinging more and more and more until the bridge itself breaks, which is crazy, but it's actually happened. So they're ordered to stop. Commanders know this, and the soldiers are always ordered to march out of step when they're working across a bridge. So this is the power of resonance. It's the same effect as feedback. If you're in a concert and the speakers start feeding back, and you get this high-pitched sort of screeching sound, it's a similar phenomena. You're getting sound coming out of. It can happen in your computer. You might, if I had two sound sources and I have a microphone there, it can be going in and coming out, going into the microphone, coming out of the computer, going back into the microphone, and reinforcing the same wavelength, and it produces this very high-pitched scream, sort of squeal sound, and it can destroy speakers, it can destroy eardrums, definitely, but it's actually controlled and used by as an instrument by some lead guitarists. And this was made famous in the 60s when they discovered this, the electric guitarists, and they use it as a way of augment their instrument. But if it's not controlled, it can be really disastrous. So this again is this sort of resonance. You may have heard of the story of the trumpets of Jericho. This is an Old Testament biblical story of you can see the picture there. This is somebody's artistic impression of it. There was an army besieging the city of Jericho, and they brought their trumpet players, and they played the trumpets with a certain resonance, and actually caused the city walls to fall down, and they defeated the enemy. So that's a sort of biblical. I would say it's more legendary than historical, most likely. And then you've got the military developing sonic weapons, which is a kind of a dark use of resonance. Yes, Jimi Hendrix was a master of using feedback, indeed. So is Carlos Santana. And this phenomenon of resonance is something that is used in a very subtle way in mantra, which we use in meditation, because, with sound can induce certain feelings. This is a constructive use of resonance is mantra. It's the same principle, but we're using it in our sadhana. Okay, I'm going to give you a few. I was looking at quotes about sound and music, and there's so many amazing quotes from extraordinary people. I just want to run a couple by you. So I'll just read this one to you. It's been found that musical vibrations make their impact upon the entire body, being picked up by the nerves, spinal column, and even by the bones. This is why people who are deaf can react to music. It's also been demonstrated that music affects the pulse, respiration, and blood pressure. But its deepest effects, and those from which most of its curative properties are derived, are mental and emotional. There are traditions of sound healing or healing with music going back thousands of years. Certainly in ancient India, the ancient Greeks used to use flutes as a healing method. Yeah, that's a sad one. Oh, that sonar can, and especially sonic explosions can kill or injure whales. That's really tragic. Yeah, but it's very powerful and can be dangerous. So that music or sound can be used for healing. But it kind of goes both ways, right? So on the one hand, this sort of machine noise, and especially something like an explosion or something, can have a very damaging effect on us, just the sound element of it. On the other side, we can use music and the right sort of sounds as a curative to bring back harmony, if you like, within the body. I love this one. This is one of my favorite definitions of music from Aldous Huxley. You remember the writer I talked about who wrote about the book of the island, about the minor birds that would say attention living on the island in Utopia? So this was what he said about music. After silence, that which comes closest to expressing the inexpressible is music. So I'm a musician, so I think that's really cool. I hope you agree. What have we got here? What are we? Throat singing for healing, great example. Yep, there's a lot of that's when I tried doing it, gave me a sore throat. But yes, if it's done properly, the throat singing. And who practices this, Sudama? There's a couple of traditional
Tuva
cultures.
The people of Tuva in Central Asia, and I know in the Amazon they practice there, of course.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And remember Pablo? Remember he came and taught us when he came up?
Yeah. I didn't realize he was getting it from his own tradition, though.
He learned from the natives in the jungle. And then he came up here to get further training. And that all has to do with harmonics, like we were talking about. It's getting your the human harmonics aligned in vibration and sync.
Yeah, it's remarkable. If you ever get a chance, to hear a really good throat singer, they'll be singing this kind of like low-toned sort of sort of chanting, kind of blurry sound. But then when they get it right, it creates a resonance, and you get this high-pitched, beautiful flute-like sound, which is a harmonic, and it sounds. You think, where is it coming from?
Right,
it's coming from the same person.
They sing from their throat and their mouth at the same time. Yeah. So they sing in stereo. We saw them in San Francisco.
Yeah, I remember. I've been to a workshop on this, and I even in one workshop I got a little bit of it. I did for a moment, and it's an amazing feeling. Takes quite a lot of. I'm sure it takes a lot of training to do it well, but it's possible to learn to do this. It's a very beautiful technique, and yes, they use it in healing. They use it as a spiritual practice. The Tuva people, did you say?
Tuva.
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 Tuva. They're in Central Asia. So what's it? Mongolia.
They're from Tuva, which is the center of Asia, and it's below Mongolia. It's a small nation of ancient horse riders. They rode horses.
So it's not part of Mongolia?
No, nearby. It's its own country, or was it during the Soviet Union era?
Oh, okay.
Soviet Union.
Probably been eaten by China or something, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, it's often called Mongolian throat singing. I think the Mongolians also, Buddhists also practice it. Maybe they probably got it from the Tuvas, I guess. Anyway, now what am I doing here? I've got something coming up. Oh yeah, I've got this cool little video talking about the effects of sound. This is kind of cool. Well, music in particular.
Did you know that every time musicians pick up their instruments, there are fireworks going off all over their brain? On the outside, they may look calm and focused, reading the music and making the precise and practiced movements required. But inside their brains, there's a party going on. How do we know this? Well, in the last few decades, neuroscientists have made enormous breakthroughs in understanding how our brains work by monitoring them in real time with instruments like fMRI and PET scanners. When people are hooked up to these machines, tasks such as reading or doing math problems each have corresponding areas of the brain where activity can be observed. But when researchers got the participants to listen to music, they saw fireworks. Multiple areas of their brains were lighting up at once as they processed the sound, took it apart to understand elements like melody and rhythm, and then put it all back together into unified musical experience. And our brains do all this work in the split second between when we first hear the music and when our foot starts to tap along. But when scientists turn from observing the brains of music listeners to those of musicians, the little backyard fireworks became a jubilee. It turns out that while listening to music engages the brain in some pretty interesting activities, playing music is the brain's equivalent of a full-body workout. The neuroscientists saw multiple areas of the brain light up, simultaneously processing different information in intricate, interrelated, and astonishingly fast sequences. But what is it about making music that sets the brain alight? The research is still fairly new, but neuroscientists have a pretty good idea. Playing a musical instrument engages practically every area of the brain at once, especially the visual, auditory, and motor cortices. And as with any other workout, disciplined, structured practice in playing music strengthens those brain functions, allowing us to apply that strength to other activities. The most obvious difference between listening to music and playing it is that the latter requires fine motor skills, which are controlled in both hemispheres of the brain. It also combines the linguistic and mathematical precision in which the left hemisphere is more involved with the novel and creative content that the right excels in. For these reasons, playing music has been found to increase the volume and activity in the brain's corpus callosum, the bridge between the two hemispheres, allowing messages to get across the brain faster and through more diverse routes. This may allow musicians to solve problems more effectively and creatively in both academic and social settings. Because making music also involves crafting and understanding its emotional content and message, musicians often have higher levels of executive function, a category of interlinked tasks that includes planning, strategizing, and attention to detail, and requires simultaneous analysis of both cognitive and emotional aspects. This ability also has an impact on how our memory systems work. And indeed, musicians exhibit enhanced memory functions, creating, storing, and retrieving memories more quickly and efficiently. Studies have found that musicians appear to use their highly connected brains to give each memory multiple tags, such as a conceptual tag, an emotional tag, an audio tag, and a contextual tag, like a good internet search engine. So how do we know that all these benefits are unique to music, as opposed to, say, sports or painting? Or could it be that people who go into music were already smarter to begin with? Neuroscientists have explored these issues, but so far they have found that the artistic and aesthetic aspects of learning to play a musical instrument are different from any other activity studied, including other arts. And several randomized studies of participants who showed the same levels of cognitive function and neural processing at the start found that those who were exposed to a period of music learning showed enhancement in multiple brain areas compared to the others. This recent research about the mental benefits of playing music has advanced our understanding of mental function, revealing the inner rhythms and complex interplay that make up the amazing orchestra of our brain.
Pretty cool, huh?
Now, it seems like women have this multitasking ability that allows the, much quicker crossover from the corpus callosum, or I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but from the left to the right brain. And males have a disadvantage, I guess, to some extent. But it seems like males are just almost as equal in learning music. Maybe it's a developed skill or something.
Well,
More natural for women, I don't know.
I don't think those. Well, what I do know about learning music, which I've been doing almost all my life, is that it requires not the opposite of multitasking, which is focus. So, and actually, in terms of productivity, quality productivity, all the studies around multitasking concur. They all agree that it's essentially a myth, that multitasking, that you can multitask and still do any kind of quality work of anything that requires any sort of high level mental functioning. So I do quite a lot of reading and research on mental performance, and everybody agrees that multitasking is the enemy of focus and quality work.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's an equivalence between that phenomena you're talking about and this, but definitely the thing about music also, it's a separate study. They found that not only is it really healthy for your brain, that it exercises the entire brain. They concluded that it's extremely good for young children because it helps to develop their brain, and they found that children that learn music at an early age tend to end up being, on average, much better at mathematics, which was a surprise to them because, they think, well, music, what's that got to do with math? It has a ton to do with math. The whole entire musical system is based on mathematics, and music is essentially a marriage of mathematics and emotion, or physics and emotion. And that's what I think makes it so sort of whole brain, because it's both analytical and emotional. So you're getting this sort of all functions kind of process going on. So that's my take on it as a musician. But anyway, let's have a look at this one. Music, I love this. Music can minister to mind's disease, pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with its sweet, oblivious antidote, cleanse the full bosom of all perilous stuff that weighs upon the heart. So it doesn't get more poetic than Shakespeare. I think that's a fabulous, comment on the healing power of music, if you like, both emotional healing. And it makes it sound like music is some kind of therapist that can come and clear your mind of pain and sadness. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, as it ought to be, because Shakespeare's supposed to be good at this stuff, right? Going back further, Pythagoras, he lived, 400 BC or something, the great mathematician. Each celestial body, in fact, each and every atom, this is before they had the concept of atoms, which actually came from India. Each and every atom produces a particular sound on account of its movement, its rhythm or vibration. All these sounds and vibrations form a universal harmony in which each element, having its own function and character, contributes to the whole. So these mathematicians / philosophers had a lot to say about music, and they placed enormous importance on it. And there's like a dozen other Greek philosophers who say, glorify and emphasize the sort of supreme importance of music as a study and as something to develop yourself and become a whole person. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I have a question for you. What's your favorite piece of music?
I think mine is the addictive sound of, like, when you're playing a game and at the end there's like this little bit of music that signifies that you won the game. It's the association of, like the event in your life with the particular meaningless sound, really, but it's very addictive.
I'm not really counting that as music. That is a sound that I would, this is me being opinionated. I'm very good at that, but I'm afraid I'm not, that doesn't qualify in my book. Give us a piece of music a meaningful sound assembled by a human being that to communicate something. I want to hear your favorite pieces of music. Ride the Wind by the Youngbloods. Okay. I don't even know it. I'm going to listen to it. I'm inspired. It must be good. I know we love a lot of the same music, Sudama. Cool. Let's hear from you folks. What's your favorite piece of music? I'm going to play you something after this, which I just discovered, which I think you're going to love.
I think
You probably
Pachelbel's
have heard.
Canon for me.
Tell us again.
Pachelbel's Canon, it's a famous piece, It's relaxing.
Classical piece, The Blue Danube by Strauss. That's very a great favorite. That's a waltz, isn't it? That's a 3/4 time. That was the one they played in the spaceship when they were in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when they were going on their little trip to the moon.
That was the blue. Wasn't that the Blue Danube?
That's the Blue Danube. I'm looking in the chat here. This is Krishnendu's favorite.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the waltz often played on New Year's Eve. Yeah, it's a very popular, beautiful piece. Let's have some others. We've got the rock and roll guy from the Youngbloods, whom I've heard of, but I'm afraid I don't know their music. But I'm gonna check it out. These Three Words by Stevie Wonder. I'm sure that's awesome. Toulouse by Carla Morrison. I don't even know these pieces. Tell us more. Okay, I suppose I'm gonna cheat and choose two. Okay. Coldplay. Okay, what's your favorite Coldplay song? I'm a huge fan of Coldplay. Saw them live in 2018 here in Levi Stadium. Mind blowing. Do you have a favorite song from Coldplay, Deepak?
Yes, Dada. And then just
Which one?
Scientist.
Oh, The Scientist. I know a lot of people love that song. I think I like Adventure of a Lifetime. That's my favorite.
Lots of songs.
Yeah.
Cool.
There were many great songs. They were amazing live. If you ever get a chance, anybody, check it out. They're really amazing. And I'm going to put my favorite in here. Yesterday by the Beatles. You know that? Okay, a couple of interesting factoids.
Paradise.
By Coldplay?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that one too. I'm going to give you my favorite piece of music. The Gates of Delirium by Yes from their album Relayer. They're absolutely remarkable piece of music. Okay. Who hasn't told us their favorite bit of music? Are we missing anybody? I think everyone has, right? Well, I've got to tell you some interesting factoids about yesterday. Two interesting things. Maybe you already know this. So yesterday, of course, it was written by Paul McCartney, and then John Lennon helped him to finish it, but it's really a Paul McCartney song. So two questions about yesterday. What is notable about yesterday in terms of its public kind of popularity? So if anybody knows, I'd be curious. And the other one is, how was it written? How was it inspired? What inspired the song? Anyone know?
Did it have something to do with Paul McCartney's mother? I don't know.
No, you're thinking of Hey Jude, I believe.
Okay.
Hey Jude was definitely inspired by his mother, yes. So this one was, it is the most recorded song in the world in history. Means the number of, it's the song most covered by other artists. So like everybody has a version of Yesterday kind of thing. So that's one thing. And the other is that Paul McCartney heard it in a dream.
Oh, right.
And he woke up in the morning and he started playing it, but he had different words. And then John Lennon came along and helped him with words. And, John Lennon's a much better lyricist. So they came up with the song. And but a very great historical song. Gates of Delirium is it's like a 22-minute piece. Amazing. What can I call it? It's a masterpiece in my view by this sort of supergroup, yes. But it was inspired by Tolstoy's book, War and Peace. So there. It's funny. I got a lot of, I'm afraid I'm a total music nerd. I've got all kind of weird musical factoids somewhere in my brain. Okay, now I'm going to treat you to my current, Gates of Delirium is kind of my all favorite piece of music, like from my lifetime. But this is my current piece of music that I can't help listening to again. And I'm utterly in love with this. And I have two versions of it. One of them, I actually have to go out of this and go to YouTube because I couldn't figure out. I normally copy videos from YouTube all the time. I know how to do it, but this one wouldn't copy in such a form that I could reproduce it. So I'm afraid I have to go to something else. Give me a second. I have to go to YouTube. Let me find YouTube. Where's my YouTube? I had it lined up somewhere. Where's my song? Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay. I think you are going to like this. Wait a second. Let me give you the background. This little girl, her nickname is Mui Mui. She's 6 years old. She has become, can you all see this one, by the way? Just confirm you can see the little girl in the picture.
Yes, yes, Dada.
Okay, I
Yes.
just want to make sure because I get confused by screen sharing. She's in China and she loves playing music. Her dad's a guitar teacher. As you can see here, this song has 6 million views. And in a second, you will understand why. Oh, wait a second. I've got to check one thing. Wait a second. I've got to make sure the sound is done properly. Oh, yeah, it was. Okay. All right. We're going to go back to it. Sorry. And now I have to find it again. Oh, here we go. Start again. Sorry, Moi Moi. I'm a huge fan of this kid. She's super cute, of course, like little kid. But she's a... So, anybody else in love? Well, any impressions? How did that affect you is what I want to know. Just curious to know if I'm the only one. Me and the 6 million others. Saddam is still a young Bloods fan. Okay.
Her song was just so extraordinary because she's so young, and to be able to just think where she is spiritually, emotionally, and physically to be able to absorb the knowledge and skill to perform so well at such a young age. It's, you know, it's a combination of a lot of excellence and genetics and
Yeah, there's something interesting about that. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I was watching her when I first saw it, and I saw her playing the guitar part. I thought, well, that's actually really quite hard. I'm going to learn that. That's a very fancy version of this song. There's a simple version using regular chords, but her dad's really trained her, and she's done a lot of practice. She practices a couple of hours a day, as I said. I don't know if I told you, but the thing that blew my mind was the moment she opened her mouth. She's got this incredibly pure voice, and it's extremely unusual for small children to be able to sing so perfectly in tune. And that's why it works. She's got an amazing ear. That her tuning is perfect. And people train for years to do that. So she's got something inborn. And in the one of the writings by our guru Anandamurti, he talks about child geniuses, and she's certainly in that category. There are different levels of that. I mean, don't know, there's a measuring rod, but she's definitely up there. She's like a superstar at the age of 6. So what can you say? And deservedly so. But this doesn't happen by accident. He was talking about, people like, the really extraordinary super sort of geniuses like Mozart and people like that, who is like, there's no explanation. It's like he was an international star in Europe when there was no YouTube, when he was 3 or 4. And what our guru said about this is actually people like that, they have this inborn talent, but it comes from their previous life. What it means is that in their previous life, they studied and worked and practiced for decades and mastered this skill, whatever it was, so that in their next life, they already have a lot of that. So it's, nothing comes from nothing. This is a result of some work that's gone on in a previous life. And I would say for sure this little girl was a musician, a very, very accomplished musician in her previous life. That's my understanding of this, how this relates to our development of certain, especially very extraordinary talent that emerges when we're very young. So anyway, that's my current favorite song, but I will listen to the Youngbloods, I promise. Okay. Let us continue, go back to where I was. Somewhere in there I had a couple of other things I was going to tell you, but I'm going to have to move through these a little quickly because I got to tell you what Tolkien says about music. Okay. I'm not only obsessed with Yes as my favorite musicians, my favorite fantasy writer is, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien. If you're not a fan of Lord of the Rings, I don't know what to say. Anyway, he goes to talks about the power of music in the Lord of the Rings. Well, it's not actually in the Lord of the Rings; it's in his prequels, the Silmarillion. So if you've read the Silmarillion, there's this from Lord of the Rings. If you've either seen the movies or read the books, the movies are kind of, what can I say, the derivative version, but the books are the original. And there's this evil power of Sauron, right? He's the ultra bad guy. His boss, he was a disciple of this guy Morgoth, who was like way worse than him, if you can imagine that. And there was this elvish princess, Luthien, and she enchanted Morgoth, this monstrous evil power who could, sort of defeat the entire world. She enchanted him with music and cast a spell on him. And so that was kind of cool. And then another figure, Finrod, who is another elvish kind of king fellow and really, really good guy, he did the same thing to Sauron, who's, later became the boss evil guy, but this time he was like the lieutenant evil guy. And Finrod enchanted Sauron with music, with the song. So the power of music was really emphasized in this. And then the last one was actually Iluvatar is pretty much synonymous with God. So Iluvatar brought the universe into being with music. And this, of course, is an echo of mythologies, many mythologies, going from the Aboriginal Australian mythologies through different versions of the Indian mythology and Tibetan and many different mythologies, basically describe the creation of the world and the universe of reality as coming out of music. So, of course, Tolkien was not writing in isolation. He was very familiar with the old mythologies, certainly of Europe. I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but this is a common sort of theme. So I think talking about music wouldn't be complete without reference to that sort of mythological creation story around. Of course, in the Bible, we have, in the beginning, if you're had any connection with Christianity, you'll know that it says in the Old Testament, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was, well, in the Moody Blues version, it says the word was Om, which I think is probably more accurate. And of course, in the yoga philosophy, Om is the cosmic sound, the vibration behind the universe. So that's also part of this philosophy. There's an interesting statement from this poet. Music is the universal language of humankind. So I have a question for you. And while you're thinking about this, I'm going to get something I need to get to make sure my computer doesn't run out of power. I forgot to plug it in. But the question is this: is music truly a universal language? Is it the same for everybody? Or is it something that differs from culture to culture in terms of the way it affects us? And here I'm talking about instrumental music. So music with no words. Is it universal or not? So I'd love to hear your comments about that. Write them in the chat. And I'll be back in about 1 minute or less. And we have electricity coming right up. And everybody will be saved. Here we go. All right. So, what do you think? Is music really universal or not? Not a universal language, a universal form of communication. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it depends how you define language. Probably by the probably by your Wikipedia definition. Okay, this is interesting. You're a fitness instructor. That's cool. The speed of the music, the tone helps the music understand the moves, and of course that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what language, right? That's true. It can be. So it's a form of communication. Since music affects the chakras, it would be universal. That's interesting. Yes, I would concur with that. Obviously, I'm going to give you an example in a moment of why I would actually argue that, in a sense, music is a universal language, but it's not. Well, let's see if there's any other comments first. Words are not needed for music. Well, it depends. There's instrumental music, and there's songs, and they're different. There's something. Depends if the words are any good or not. It's nice to have words because the human voice is perhaps the finest instrument of all, if it can be. So my thought on what's that, Sudama?
Not in my case.
There are exceptions. Everybody, I have a theory that anybody who can be taught to sing in tune, but One of the things I've thought about with instrumental music is this. There was some great movie producer. I was just reading one of the quotes I read today. I'm trying to remember who it was. They basically said, or I think director, they said, in any movie, music, half of the effect is the music. Right? But in film, usually if they're telling a story, the music is in the background. So it's like the action, the visual part, and the dialogue, that's the foreground. But the background, which creates the emotional backdrop, is the music. And if the music is written afterwards, usually someone like John Williams, of course, one of the great masters of this, or who's the other one, the very famous one, I forget. But the film is pretty much completed, and they're writing these themes, and they've got their musical ideas all together, but they don't actually finalize it until the cutting is done, and then they set the music to it, because the music has to support the emotional arc of the story and follow that, and so you feel what you're supposed to feel when this event is happening. So the thing about film, of course, if you think about it for a moment, when they say we make a film in English and then it's going to be shown in Japan, of course they may have subtitles, or they may dub it. Hopefully they subtitle it. I think it's better, but they don't change the music. So what does that tell us? And of course, the reverse is true. You have some great film, some film made in India. You watch it here, and again, maybe subtitled, but they keep the music the same. So we know that spoken language is not universal. I can't understand Hindi or Bengali or Tamil. I can't understand Japanese or speak them, but I can understand on an emotional level. So it's not an intellectual understanding, but I'll feel what I'm supposed to feel at that point in the movie from Japan or the movie from India. So what that tells me is that music is a universal language of emotion. And as you pointed out, Krishnendu, the reason is because it resonates with the chakras in the same way. We all have the same kind of chakras, and they all respond to sound in the same way, and that induces the different emotions. So that's my thesis, whether you like it or not. Now I'm going to go on and explain how that actually works in terms of yoga philosophy. Some of you already know this. Wait a second, I just want to give you a couple of comments from two of the greatest musicians in history. He that divines the secret of my music is freed from the unhappiness that haunts the whole world of men. Well, this sort of implies that only men are unhappy, but this is presumably meant for all genders. Yeah, I think this is amazing. I actually experienced something like that with some of Beethoven's music when I was playing it, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to tell you that another time. Some of you might have heard me tell you my Beethoven's first sonata story, which I was learning at the time, long ago. Igor Stravinsky, one of my favorite musicians, Russian. The profound meaning of music's essential aim is to produce a communion, a union of the human with the fellow human and with the supreme being. Igor Stravinsky, a really amazing musician. So I'm going to skip this piece because I'm running out of time, but I'm just talking because I already talked about that. And I'm going to rush through bits of this. So music is used in so many spiritual traditions. So here's just like a list. Catholic masses and devotional singing, Indian classical music, clearly, Hindu bhajans and other languages in India, devotional songs, Mongolian and Tibetan overtone chanting, I should say Tuvan chanting. I'm not giving credit where it's due. Aboriginal didgeridoo music, Salish Indian drumming, I believe that's in South America. Gospel music, Peruvian whistling bottles. They blow these flutes with their noses, which sounds kind of gross, but that's how they work. Chanting of mantras, of course, in Buddhism, Hinduism, yoga, tantra, and other traditions. So there's a whole lot of different, and there are many more. Music is used very broadly in different cultures as a part of people's spiritual practice to induce a spiritual feeling or a spiritual state. And it's indicative of its kind of universal power to do that. So mantras are very central to our practice and those of many traditions. So mantras are used in singing or chanting, right? So that's sort of more repetitive. And then in silent meditation. And there's a really cool piece of research coming out of Macquarie University. I've mentioned it before. That's in Sydney, Australia. They were comparing, and this is very recent. It was only published beginning of this year or last year. It was the grant money was given by the government because they have an epidemic of depression and even suicide in Australia, and they're funding anything that they think might help. And so this postgraduate student managed to get some of that funding and worked with a couple of professors. They put together this study comparing chanting of mantras and the effect on people's moods and emotions, and they were using different scanning techniques and so forth, and wave measuring brain waves, comparing the effect of chanting with a mantra to meditating with the same mantra, meditating silently, and also comparing to a control where they're not doing anything in particular. And they found something very interesting. They found that actually the effect, the benefit, was more from chanting than from the meditation, using the mantra. So the out loud singing or chanting of the mantra had a stronger effect than on the silent repetition of the mantra. Now, I've seen that. That's very, to me, this was no surprise at all, because they were working with beginners. So when you first start practicing meditation and chanting, and that, most people, the first effect they get is from the chanting, from the kirtan that we sing, as an example. It's easier. For beginners especially, it's easier. Silent meditation takes a lot longer to become adept at. So over time, if they'd done this same experiment on a group of people who'd been meditating for 20 years with the mantra as we do, I think they would have had a different result. I'd love to do that experiment. I'm actually going to try and interview this lady who conducted the experiment. But anyway, that's my kind of take on that. Mantras and chakras, this is how they're related. So a few concepts you need. Prana is life force or vital energy. It flows through these channels. You can see the yogi there with 3 channels, one along through the center of the spine. It's called the Shushumna, and the 2 channels running that cross at various points on the spine. And where they cross, they form the 5 the 5 lower chakras. Each of these chakras is symbolized or represented by a lotus, and each of those lotuses has a number of petals. And as you can see, there are 4, 6, 10, 12, and 16. And at the top, there are 2. And the total number of petals is 50. Each of those represents a particular feeling, or the translation of vritti is mental propensity. It's like feelings like anger, fear, love, affection, a whole range of emotions and feelings. And the total of these is 50, as I said. And then the Kundalini, we're not going to worry about Kundalini today, but these are kind of these chakras blown up. The Sanskrit language is composed of the root sounds of each of these 50 feelings. So each of these petals has a sound associated with it, and those sounds make up the Sanskrit alphabet, and that is the language of mantras. So it's through this language that we can set up this resonance in our chakra system that we use. That's why we use these mantras in meditation and chanting. And this is this is perhaps, I believe this is probably the oldest song in the world. And this is from the Rig Veda. It's a Sanskrit mantra or set of verses. And this is the translation. And it says, let us move together, let us sing together, let us come to know our minds together. Some of you, of course, know this very well. Let us share like sages of the past, that all people together may enjoy the universe. Unite our intentions, let our hearts be inseparable, our minds as one mind, as we, to truly know one another, become one. I'm going to sing this to you with a different tune than the one you may be familiar with, but I believe this is the oldest song in the world. And as I said, it comes from the Rig Veda, which is parts of the Rig Veda maybe as much as 15,000 years old. Of course, it's an oral tradition. There was no writing in that time. So this is the Sangha Chadrang mantra, and I'm not sure if I can change the sound here. Anyway, it goes like this. Sangha Chadrang Sangvaradvam Sangho Manangsi Janat Deva Bhaga Jata Pure Sanjanana Upasati Samaniva Akuti Samana Hridaya Nivaha Samamastu Omano Jata Susahasa